Chapter 8, Snozzcumbers. But if you don't eat people like all the others, then what do you live on? That is a squelchy and tricky problem around here. In this slosh-flunking giant country, happy eats like pineapples and pig winkles is simply not growing. Nothing is growing except for one extremely icky poo vegetable. It is called the snozzcumber. The snozzcumber? There is no such thing. The BFG looked at Sophie and smiled, showing about 20 of his square white teeth. Yesterday we was not believing in giants, was we? Today we is not believing in snozzcumbers. Just because we happen not to have certainly actually seen something with our own two little winkles, we think it is not existing. What about, for instance, the great squizzly Scotch hopper? I beg your pardon. And the humple crimp? What's that? And the rap rascal? The what? And the crumpscottle? Are they animals? They is common animals, said the BFG contemptuously. I is not a very know-all giant myself, but it seems to me that you is an absolutely know-nothing human being. Your brain is full of rotten wool. You mean cotton wool? What I mean and what I say is two different things, the BFG announced rather grandly. I will now show you a snozzcumber. The BFG flung open a massive cupboard and took out the weirdest looking thing Sophie had ever seen. It was about half as long. It was about half as long again as an ordinary man, but was much thicker. It was as thick around its girth as a perambulator. It was black with white stripes along its length, and it was covered all over with coarse knobs. Here is the repulsive snozzcumber, the BFG cried, waving it around. I squoggle it, I despise it, I desponge it. But because I is refusing to gobble up human beings like the other giants, I must spend my life guzzling up icky poo snozzcumbers instead. If I don't, I will be nothing but skin and groans. You mean skin and bones? I know it is bones, but please understand, I cannot be helping if if I sometimes is saying things a little squiggly. I is trying my best, very best all the time. The big friendly giant looked suddenly so forlorn that Sophie got quite upset. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be rude. There never was any schools to teach me talking in giant country, the BFG said sadly. But couldn't your mother have taught you? My mother? Giants don't have mothers. Surely you is knowing that. I did not know that. Who ever heard of a giant, a woman giant? Shouted the BFG, waving the snozzcumber around his head like a lasso. There never was a woman giant, and there never will be one. Giants is always men. Sophie felt herself getting a little muddled. In that case, how were you born? Giants isn't born. Giants appears, and that's all there is to it. They simply appears the same way as the sun and the stars. And when did you appear? Now, how on earth could I be knowing a thing like that? It was so long ago I couldn't count. You mean you don't even know how old you are? No giant is knowing that. All I is knowing about myself is that I is very old, very, very old and crumply, perhaps as old as the earth. What happens when a giant dies? Giants is never dying. Sometimes, and quite suddenly, a giant is disappearing and nobody is ever seeing where he goes to. But mostly, us giants is simply going on and on like whipsy time twiddlers. The BFG was still holding the awesome snozzcumber in his right hand, and now he put one end into his mouth and bit off a huge hunk of it. He started crunching it up, and the noise he made was like the crunching of lumps of ice. Else, filthy, he spluttered, speaking with his mouth full and spraying large pieces of snozzcumber like bullets into Sophie's direction. Sophie hopped around on the tabletop, ducking out of the way. It's disgusterous. It's sickable. It's rotsome. It's maggot-wise. Try it yourself, the spousome snozzcumber. No, thank you, Sophie said, backing away. It's all you're going to be guzzling around here from now on, so you might as well get used to it. Go on, you snipsy little winkle. Have a go. Sophie took a small nibble. Ugh, she sputtered. Oh, no. Oh, gosh. Oh, help. She spat it out quickly. It tastes of frog skins and rotten fish. Worse than that, cried the BFG, roaring with laughter. To me, it is tasting of clock coaches and slime wranglers. Do we really have to eat it? You do, unless you is wanting to become so thin you will be disappearing into thick air. Into thin air, a thick air is something quite different. Once again, that sad, winsome look came into the BFG's eyes. Words is such a twitch-tickling problem to me all my life. So you must simply try to be patient and stop squibbling. As I am telling you before, I know exactly what words I am wanting to say, but somehow or other they is always getting squiffed and squiddled around. Oh, that happens to everyone. Not like it happens to me. I is speaking the most terrible Wiglish. I think you speak beautifully. You do? Cried the BFG, suddenly brightening. You really do? Simply beautifully, Sophie repeated. Well, that is the nicest present anybody's ever given me in my whole life, cried the BFG. Are you sure you're not twiddling my leg? Of course not. I just love the way you talk. How wondercrump, cried the BFG, still beaming. How whoopsie splunkers. How absolutely squiffling. I is all of a stutter. Listen, we don't have to eat snozzcumbers. In the fields around our village, there are all sorts of lovely vegetables like cauliflower and carrots. Why don't you get some of those next time you go visiting? The BFG raised his great head proudly in the air. I is a very honorable giant. I would rather be chewing up rotsome snozzcumbers than snitching things from other people. You stole me, Sophie said. I did not steal you very much, said the BFG, smiling gently. After all, you is only a tiny little girl.